Welcome to Stormwater Drainage Solutions. If you're a drainage nerd, you're going to love this video. So what we have here is an old storm structure made from brick and mortar from the 1940s. Now, the situation we have is this storm structure is completely overgrown, it's clogged up, and the terracotta 6-inch drain line that's at the bottom of it that runs out to the river has collapsed in several spots, and it is completely grown in with roots and failed. There's no saving that pipe. So we have to replace the 6-inch main line on this box. Now, because this drain line was put in such a long time ago, back then the river was a lot lower. So our new drain line is going to have to be installed higher up in order to accommodate the fall that we need. Remember to give 811 a call before you do any excavation. That way they can come out and mark any utility lines that may be in the area. So to start this job off, the very first thing we're going to have to do is get the grates off of this storm structure. Now, it had a lot of overgrowth and cypress trees, cypress knees, roots, vines, grass. There was a ton of stuff growing over this storm box. The client actually had a landscaping company come in here and they cleared out the majority of the debris so we could get in here and work. Now, our mission was to get it opened up, cut all the cypress knees that were growing slightly over it, the roots that had encased around and through this iron grate, and get it pried off of here so we could begin our work. Now, we specialize in this kind of work. If you have a storm structure that needs repairs or needs to be cleaned out, we can easily accomplish that for you. So as you can see, we're just kind of looking and taking a look at how overgrown this thing was. Now, later in this video, I'm going to put a couple of before and after shots. That way you can see the difference. But just remember this image right here of what this storm structure looked like when we first arrived, as well as the grates. We're going to get those cleaned off as well and get the roots out of there. So basically, we're going to kind of go at this with shovels and just start kind of chopping away at the root mats that have grown around this box on the inside. And we're going to have to put our sump pump in here to start pumping this box down, because we need to be able to get into this box to begin our work. So this sump pump is going to basically be running 24/7 on this job. So here's the deal with this box. So this was the story I got from the client. This box was installed back in the 1940s because there was a spring in this area. So the spring feeds into this box, and then that 6-inch terracotta main line would take the water from this spring and send it out to the river. So this box always has water in it. Whether it's rain or shine, this box has water 365 days out of the year because it is spring fed. So it's groundwater going into this box constantly. Now, the other thing that feeds into this box is a 4-inch Schedule 20 PVC main line for the downspout drains around the home that is further up on the hill on the property. Now, that pipe was fully submerged when we got here, but they were not having any issues with their downspout drains because their property is so high up on that hill that even if that pipe is submerged here at the discharge end, the water can still make it out because there's a ton of fall on that line. So as you can see here, we finally kind of broke through those roots and all that root mass, and the water's getting pumped down lower and lower so we can begin to clean it out even more and then begin our work. So the bottom of this box probably had about, I would say, a foot to a foot and a half worth of sludge at the bottom. So remember, this isn't sanitary. So it's not, it's not sanitary sludge we're dealing with. This basically is mud and leaves, rotten leaves, just things like that that accumulated at the bottom. Now this is inside that terracotta main line. You can see it is completely packed full in there of roots and debris. So there's no clearing that out. Now that bag is actually pushed into the other lateral line that the spring feeds into this box at the bottom. So water always is coming out of that line. There's no stopping that water. We tried pushing a bag in there to kind of slow it down, but the water is just going to build up behind that bag and it's still going to push its way out. So we have to just keep pumping this box out to continue to work. So right now we're actually putting bricks inside that terracotta pipe to act as filler to fill the void, because we're going to be mixing up some hydraulic cement to seal that terracotta pipe up. So the bricks just help take up the void, so we're not having to use buckets and buckets of hydraulic cement. You basically put the bricks in there and then you fill in the rest of the void and then over all of it with the hydraulic cement and smooth it out. And then once that hardens up, that'll make a watertight seal and no more water is going to be going in there. Even though the water can't go out anyway because that pipe is completely collapsed, but still we wanted to go ahead and just seal it up. So now you can see that we're mixing the hydraulic cement up in the bucket that it comes in, and we just went ahead and mixed both bags up because we were just going to use all of it. Now, if you've ever worked with hydraulic cement, then you already know how quick this stuff sets. So hydraulic cement is not like normal concrete, and it's not like quick dry cement either that takes about 30 minutes to start to harden up. Hydraulic cement has compounds in it that essentially make it react, the hardening effect react quicker. And that chemical reaction causes it to heat up. And as it's heating up, it starts to harden. So hydraulic cement has a working time, I would say roughly anywhere from 8 to 10 minutes before it is too hard to work with anymore and it becomes solid as a rock. So you do want to, go pretty quick while you're working with hydraulic cement. You don't want to take too much time when working with this stuff. You want to have the area prepped up, ready to go, pre-planned on what you're going to be cementing with it, and then you want to get it mixed up and start mudding that area. You don't want to play around with it for too long because it will harden up in the bucket on you, and then you're going to have to get more and you're going to have to mix it up again. So you want to make sure that you know what you're going to do with it before you mix it up. Now, as you can see, we're just basically using our hand with a glove to grab that hydraulic cement and throw it in the voids around those bricks. And then we're going to smooth it out once we have all of it in place where we want and pack it in there. We got the hydraulic cement set into place, and now you can really see, look at the brickwork on this old storm structure. And the interesting thing about this storm structure, if you notice, there's two sets of bricks. So you have the original bricks that go from the bottom up, and then you have another set of bricks that was added later on. This was to increase the height of this storm structure to bring it back up to grade, because additional fill dirt at some point was brought into this property and filled in around this storm structure. I don't know the exact date. The client didn't know either, but somewhere probably in the 60s or 70s, it was their best guess of when that fill dirt was brought in here, and that additional brickwork had to be done on the storm structure. So I thought that was pretty cool and interesting. We are going to be replacing the terracotta main line with a dual wall 6-inch pipe. So dual wall, also known as N12, has a corrugated exterior and a smooth walled interior. So it's smooth inside just like PVC pipe, but it's corrugated on the exterior. This adds additional strength to this pipe. This pipe is ridiculously strong and it's awesome to work with. It comes in 20-foot sections. It has a gasketed spigot end and it has a bell end on the other side. Now that 4-inch 45 that you saw there, we're obviously not using a 4-inch on this because that's 6-inch. We just put the 45 there so we could draw our line, so we could get our angle that we're going to need when digging the trench for this pipe. Now, dual wall pipe, you can bend it slightly, but you cannot make angles out of it, meaning you can't get a 22.5-degree bend, you can't get a 45, obviously you can't get a 90-degree bend. So you can't get those types of angles out of it, but you can bend the pipe slightly, especially on longer runs. So this comes in handy in different situations. But here we're going to be running this pipe as straight as possible. Now we have Miguel on the mini excavator. He's an awesome operator of that machine. He's very good at it. And he's going to dig this trench out, and we're going to get this trench dug within probably the next 4 to 5 hours. And we're going to be going deep on this line because we have to maintain our fall. Now, this pipe, like I said earlier, we're going to set it a little bit higher up in the box so we can maintain our fall all the way to the river. Now, this is roughly 130 feet of dual wall. So this is a pretty good run. And the reason we have to set it up earlier, which I was explaining a little bit in the beginning of the video, is back when this box was first installed with the original terracotta main line, that main line could be put at the very bottom of this box because back then the river, the water level was a lot lower than it is today. The water level on the river has risen a lot higher because there's different dams and levees on this river that hold the water up. So the water is higher in this particular area. So if we tried to put our new main line at the very bottom, by the time we got out to the river, maintaining our fall on that pipe, we would literally be underwater. The old terracotta pipe that is in here is underwater in the river. So that's also probably one of the reasons why it failed and it's no longer working, because it always had water backed up in it. And once the roots got in there, they could just continuously feed on all that water and nutrients in the pipe, and it cracked the pipe and the pipe collapsed in multiple sections throughout the whole thing. So we have to have our pipe higher in this box in order to keep this box drained and to keep the water flowing properly out of this main line. There's no other way to do it. The only other way maybe to do it is to replace the entire box with a new shallower box and keep the main line up at the depth that we had it. But there's no point to do that because there's nothing wrong with this box. It just needed to be cleaned out and a new main line needed to be installed. Whenever it comes to drainage, the curiosity of it always gets the best of me. So the lateral line that feeds into this box that constantly has water pouring through it from this spring, I had to try to see where it went. So I did bring my camera and I put my camera in the line, but unfortunately I was only able to get maybe 2 to 3 feet into this pipe before I ran into a wall of roots, and I could not get through those roots. I tried forcing the camera through them, but it would not budge. So this was as far as I could get, unfortunately. From what I can tell though, this pipe is an old concrete pipe and probably was installed, around the 1940s when this box was installed. And I have a feeling that this pipe probably does not go much further because it probably just enters right into the spring, into the bedrock that's underground. And that's why these roots are just entering in right there. But the water that's coming out of here is crystal clear. It's freezing cold and it's not dirty at all. So it has to be coming from a spring. And I mean, the client said it's coming from a spring. That's why it was installed back in the 1940s. So now we're going to core tap this box. So the way we're going to core tap it is we're just going to be using our hammer chisel drill, and we're going to go in a circle with the drill bit. We're going to make a 6-inch circle with a smaller bit. So we're just going to do holes around where we outlined with the pipe. And then once we have all those holes drilled out, we're just going to knock it out with a hammer. That way we can slide our pipe in, and then we'll be using the hydraulic cement to mud around that pipe and give it a clean look and seal it off. As Miguel makes his way down with the excavator digging out the trench, we're checking the depth and making sure that we are following the slope that we want to maintain. And we're going to be using a level, obviously, to do that. And as he's digging that trench, we're going to begin to lay out our pipe and fittings and start assembling those. So halfway down this run, we're actually going to be using the French Drain Man 6-inch to 4-inch T-fitting. We're going to use this upright, and we're going to have a clean out directly in the middle of the run because we want to make sure that if this line ever does need to be maintenanced or scoped, it can be done in the middle and at the box and at the discharge end. So we'll have 3 points of entry for this system in case it ever needs it in the future. Now, as you can see, when we're digging for these larger systems, and we do this on 4-inch systems as well, I'll probably start showing it more in the videos, we actually put the level at the bottom in the trench, and we level it out and make sure the trench has a flat bottom. Now we continue to push that level through the trench and make sure that we have fall on our trench using that level. As long as that bubble is going in the opposite direction of the way that you want the water to travel, you know that that pipe is going to be laid correctly. And you want to make sure that the trench has a flat bottom and there's no bellies at all in that trench. Now, a belly is anywhere that that pipe can bow or dip down. You do not want this to happen, because anywhere there's a belly in a line, what's going to ultimately happen is debris and sediment is going to settle at the bottom of that line. So you want to make sure the trench is a flat bottom trench, meaning no bellies. It needs to be as smooth as possible down there, and it's sloped in the direction that you want that water to flow. As long as you do those two things whenever you're laying drainage pipe, then you know that system is going to flow water, and it's going to last, and it's going to flow water correctly. Those two things are crucial, and that's where I see the most failure in this industry. The systems I go and I camera snake and I inspect, the failures I see, it's always because there's bellies in a line. And usually those bellies are around those joints that those bellies have been formed. That's usually where the failures are. So right now we're putting together our clean out tee. As you can see, we have the French Drain Man 6-inch heavy duty fitting, and then the 4-inch portion of it is going to be going up to the surface. That way we have a clean out at the top in the middle of the run. Now you can see we are putting additional protection around these joints. So this whole entire line is going to be protected. Now I'm going to be giving away some trade secrets here. So listen carefully. For roots, we want to keep the roots away from this system as much as possible. So first things first, the dual wall has gaskets. So they're gasketed fittings. The bell end slips in to the hub, and there's a gasket on that. So that's going to be the first layer of defense. The second layer of defense is going to be our tile tape. We're going to tile tape those joints up. So that's the second layer of defense. The third layer of defense, we're going to be using copper tape. So roots do not like copper. Roots will avoid copper like the plague, because copper essentially is poison to roots. Now, copper doesn't kill the trees. It doesn't necessarily kill the roots. Once the roots see it's there, they will avoid it and they will grow away from it. So it will not kill the tree, but it will kill roots that get into contact with it. So using copper will keep roots away. So that is one trade secret in this industry. So we're going to be using that copper tape around our joints, and we're also going to be doing a few other things later on in this video once we have this drain line installed. Now, as you can see, we're making pretty good progress on it. We have our 45-degree elbow connected in here, and then we have a straight shot from there all the way down to the next 45-degree fitting, and then our clean out tee is right after that. And then it's going to be a straight shot from that clean out all the way to the river and through the seawall. To maintain proper pitch on this pipe, in this section here to go through this hill, we were roughly 3.5 feet deep. When I stood in that trench, it was up to my waist. So it was roughly 3.5 feet deep. It got pretty deep. Now, working with dual wall is awesome because you can pull it up out of the trench because it does have a slight bend to it, and we put the shovel across the trench, and then we can work on that dual wall pipe up out of the trench. So that helps save on the pain in your back, and it also makes it where you can make those connections a lot easier because you're not bent down in a narrow trench trying to make those connections. And like I said earlier, as long as you have a flat bottom trench sloped in the direction that you want it to go, that dual wall pipe, once you put it back down in the trench after you've made your connections, will be perfectly sloped where you want it to go. So here's another thing that we're going to be doing. To help keep the roots away, we're adding a fourth layer of protection. So we're going to be taking the French Drain Man's copper sock. We're going to be cutting it down the middle to open it up to make it bigger. And we're going to be draping this over our entire drain line. Now this copper drain sock will over time leach copper ions into the ground, into the soil around that drain line, and that will add protection and create essentially a protective shield around your pipe to keep those roots at bay and to keep them from trying to grow around and into the pipe. Now, granted, 95% of the time when I see roots get into a system, they always usually get in at a joint or a break in the pipe. So usually they don't just grow right through the pipe. Sometimes I have seen them wrap around the pipe, and over the years it squeezes the pipe and crushes it down to a point where it cracks or there's a hole, and then a root will start to grow through that hole. One of the root leaders will get in there, and then it will begin just to grow throughout the pipe because it's feeding on the nutrients. So the final protective stage that we're going to be doing is putting copper sulfate in the ground here. That's the blue that you see all throughout the trench. So the copper sock and the copper tape take time to work. Those will begin to leach their ions out into the soil in roughly maybe a year's time. They will begin to work. So the copper sulfate will begin to work immediately. So by the time the copper sulfate is completely dissolved and is no longer active and no longer working in the ground, the copper sock and the copper tape will be working. So we have multiple layers of defense against roots for this drain line because we want this drain line to last forever. I want it to last the rest of my client's life. I want it to last the rest of my life. The final thing we had to do was core tap through the seawall. Now this seawall was a bear to get through because not only were we going through the new seawall, but we had to go through the old seawall. So this was probably about 3 feet of concrete and rebar, and there's no telling what else was in that old seawall. So we just could not get through this, and we tried. But my guys and me, we couldn't get through it. So I called in the cat men. They came in with a 7-inch core tap bit. They also had a rig that they bolted to the old seawall, and they were able to core tap this thing within probably 35 to 45 minutes. They got through it. These guys are experts in core tapping. That's all they do. The catmen. If you ever need core tapping or concrete cutting in Tampa Bay, give them a call. I'll go ahead and I'll link their information in the description below. So if you need that type of work, you got their information. So we got our 6-inch mainline core tap through this seawall. And as you can see, that water's already draining out from the box. That spring has filled the box back up because we took the pump out. The last thing here is going to be getting these grates back on. And we are also going to be putting screen on the grate just because we want to try to keep debris and leaves from falling into this box over time. That way it keeps it cleaner. So we'll be putting a screen mesh on there, and it'll also keep the mosquitoes out of this box too. So it'll help in a few different things. Now let's take a look down this clean out, and you can see that water is flowing through there nicely. So we have a good downhill pitch here all the way to the seawall. So guys, that just about does it for this video. This was a long one. If you enjoyed it, give us a thumbs up. It really supports what we're doing. It supports the channel. We love doing drainage work. This is my passion. This is all I'll do for the rest of my life as long as I'm capable of doing it. So if you need drainage work in the Tampa Bay area, whether it's residential or commercial, give Stormwater Drainage Solutions a call at 813-614-3456 or visit us at our website at stormwaterdrainagesolutions.com. We got you covered.